Hello, I'm Chris Jameson, and this is my interpersonal communication project for Human Services 508, Spring Subterm B at Liberty University. Next slide. Today I'm going to be discussing some of the key components that are essential for successful interpersonal communication. I'm going to take the opportunity in this presentation to define interpersonal communication and define listening. I'm also going to discuss how listening relates to interpersonal communication. I'm going to discuss my overarching goal that I've identified for myself in my quest to improve my interpersonal communication skills. I'm also going to um, provide information on my interpersonal behavioral blends, define noise pollution and how that relates to communication, and how to address those particular noise pollution situations. And I'm also going to describe my personal action plan for achieving my overarching goal. Next slide. Burley Allen, Stewart, defines interpersonal communication as the type or kind of communication that it happens when and people involved talk and listen in a way that maximizes the presence of the personal, while Burley Allen describes or defines listening as taking in information from speakers, other people, ourselves, while remaining non-judgmental and empathetic, acknowledging the talking in such a way that invites conversation or communication to continue, and providing limited feedback or limited encouraging but limited input. Um, Burley Allen indicates that we spend about 40% of our time listening and 35% of our time talking. And that is a fairly significant number, since listening is the act of taking in, or as Stewart puts it, inhaling. It's important that we take the opportunity to sharpen our interpersonal communication skills or our listening skills in order to improve on our interpersonal communication skills. As you can see, both Burley Allen and Stewart's definitions are somewhat interlocking. Stewart identifies listening as being a crucial component of interpersonal communication, while Burley Allen sets the stage by discussing the important components of listening, such as acknowledgement, listening empathetically, and exercising a non-judgmental attitude. Next slide. My overarching goal, keeping in mind the definitions that we just discussed, is to essentially become a better listener and communicator through achieving level 1 listening skills. According to Burley Allen, level 1 listening skills are characterized by listening with empathy while refraining from judging the talker or the speaker. Additionally, Burley Allen indicates that level 1 listeners are able to view arguments and statements from the talker or speaker's perspective while assessing the communicator's perspective from a holistic view. Next slide. When I think of enlarging the conversation, I think about the ways in which talkers and listeners are able to contribute to a conversation in such a way that it builds meaningful relationships or facilitates some level of growth or development, or greater understanding of a concern or an issue. I define the act of enlarging the conversation as the advanced communication between two or more people or individuals, where the people that are involved in that particular conversation are cognizant of the various pieces of information that are exchanged during the interaction, including aspects of culture, identity, and are able to utilize effective listening, speaking, and reasoning skills to understand the position or argument of others from multiple perspectives through practicing empathy. This definition is, of course, inspired by my passion for effective communication and building a strong interpersonal relationships, regardless of personal views or perspectives. Next slide. According to my Queendom.com interpersonal communication assessment, I scored a 74% out of 100. This assessment identifies that I have a tendency to be insightful, and that, of course, I'm great at putting together a holistic picture to interpret uh, words and actions of others, that I'm able to basically understand the keys to good interpersonal communication, um, include empathy, and that my insightfulness will improve as I age. While this score does have some positive attributes, I certainly believe that I have a tendency to be overly eager when it comes to helping others, which results in me having poor listening actions during certain conversations, including interrupting the speaker or talker, excuse me, or finishing the thoughts of others in an effort to convey a relevant point or deliver a message that I believe fits that particular situation. Next slide. According to my Uniquely You survey or personality assessment, I am a CIS. Um, Attributes of a CIS include liking to do things uh, the right way, not being aggressive or pushy, but being sensitive about others and thinking about the way others see me and think about me as a person. Um, and I also feel the need to impress others and provide stability to certain situations. Some negative attributes of this blend are that I am not quick at decision making and often spend too much time contemplating that, you know, uh, about what a decision should be instead of making the actual decision, which is always not the best thing to do, particularly when a decision needs to be made. And so that's just an important thing for me to keep in mind um, as I'm moving forward in my interpersonal communication skills. One of the reasons that I believe I'm not quick at making decisions is because due to a negative internal conversation that I have with myself. Burley Allen indicates that listening uh, to yourself, is a particularly important attribute. And sometimes we would be surprised at the negative feedback that we provide to ourselves. So one of the things that I'd like to do is learn to combat that negative internal conflict or communication that I'm having with myself. Um, these negative dialogues often cause me to question or second guess myself, um, drawing out that decision making process. Um, and of course, I've noticed that it's led to some uh, certain uphangs or hang-ups in my uh, interpersonal communication skills. Next slide. So there are several personal barriers that exist in achieving my overarching goal. A desire to do things the right way has the potential to result in some indecisiveness and frustration, or even a loss of focus, thus impacting my interpersonal communication. I frequently find myself trying to determine what is meant by the right way, particularly when there's ambiguity involved. Due to this ambiguity, I certain I in certain situations I sort of shy away from interpersonal communication necessary to uh, remedy the situation because I believe it might result in some additional conflict. Sensitivity to the thoughts of others is also a potential stumbling block for me in achieving my OAG because uh, um, in some cases, it's very easy to waste time thinking about what others think about you as opposed to trying to find a solution to a problem or being an active listener in a conversation, which can be problematic. Um, and since I also desire logical explanations, this is also something that is a potential stumbling block for me in achieving my OAG. A lot of times there may not be a logical explanation or the structure that I desire. So when that occurs, it tends to uh, be a stumbling block in me making a decision or determining the best outcome for a situation. And is, of course, a problem that I would like to address. Next slide. Internal noise and external noise pollution. Uh, I would define internal and external noise pollution as anything that can be seen as those factors that contribute to a loss of focus when attempting to communicate or when attempting to listen. Some of those include social media, technology, cell phones, computers, Facebook, um, ambient noise, being judgmental or paying more attention to your own personal thoughts than the thoughts of the talker or communicator. Next slide. Some solutions to internal and external noise pollution is creating a technology-free zone, which basically enhances focus and allows us to focus on fewer stimuli. The other piece to enhancing that internal, or excuse me, or another solution to coming up with ways that we can um, be more well-rounded in dealing with internal and external noise pollution is creating a safe space that will promote the sharing of diverse perspectives. Sometimes when we are unable to clear our head and we are thinking about the thoughts of others, particularly in my situation, since I'm somebody who frequently thinks about how others think about me, when I feel like I'm in a safe space, obviously I'm able to better communicate because I'm able to focus a lot more on the goal at hand. The other piece is clearing your mind of any distractions before engaging in any lengthy interpersonal or group communication. Next slide. My action plan for achieving my overarching goal is to understand that there may be no clear logical answer to a situation and accepting that that is okay. The second is utilizing Peterson 2007, uh, the talker listener card approach, or the TLC approach, which I think is a pretty amazing approach that allows us to basically assess who should be talking when and what's healthy in a particular environment. The next piece that I have identified is spending more time focusing on the person delivering the message as opposed to their personal thoughts about me or what I believe their thoughts are about a point I'm conveying. The next piece that I've identified for achieving my OEG is developing and understanding that conflict can be healthy. Next slide. Becoming a more confident in my abilities to make a decision or um, stand by my opinion, or of course, is another interpersonal communication piece that will help me to feel comfortable about conveying a particular message, but it will also put me at ease about my listening skills and my ability to be able to accept or take in particular messages. The last thing that I have identified in achieving my overarching goal is basically utilizing the guidelines that are outlined in Stewart's uh, book for facilitating productive dialogues, which include listening with care, speaking in a respectful manner, sharing speaking time or airtime, and reflecting on my own personal views without becoming distracted. Next slide. Uh, as far as final thoughts are concerned, in the conclusion, um, I am wondering what interpersonal communication will look like in the future because it's not necessarily an easy task. As we utilize technology more, the way that we communicate is certainly changing, and it will be interesting to see how interpersonal communication evolves. And according to Shebanova, 2010, one of the things that he identifies is that because of the technology, we're able to more adequately hide behind some of the psychological risk uh, that occurs during interpersonal communication, and we're able to become more anonymous and conceal our opinions, but reveal other sides of ourselves that uh, usually satisfy any type of desire or intention to have negative communication. With this being the case, I'd like to uh, maybe dwell on that question at some point in the future, because I do think that's an interesting topic. Thank you for listening to my interpersonal communication project for Human Services 508. Take care and have a wonderful day.